We got new consistency upgrades as well as brand new defensive options, without any actual power creep. How is this a set that came after the Luard set?
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and as you might see from the intro, the latest reveals for Genesis are quite interesting and exciting at the same time, because they bring a special unique twist to new support for an archetype. As stated in the intro, these new cards that we've got today aren't particularly that much stronger than we already got, but they make the deck more consistent, and they also give Genesis, or the Astral Poet, Astral Deity deck, more defensive options without actually power creeping out older cards or just the deck in general, which is quite astonishing for what we've seen with the track record of Bushiroad the latest few sets. Of course, the previous set with the whole Big Belly and Victor and Lambros and Tava sets was quite tame in comparison to the sets that we had before, but it's definitely a good thing to see that they keep this track record going into the next set, that is VBT 12 Divine Lightning Radiant. So hopefully this pattern will continue. But before we get into that discussion, let's take a look at these new 3 Genesis cards, as we've got the brand new VR for the Astral Poet deck, as well as 2 generic, pseudo-generic support cards that definitely will support this Astral Poet strategy to some interesting degree, or definitely increase the consistency of the build in general. So let's dive straight into these cards and see what they have in store for Genesis as a whole. And we're going to start off with a new rare grade 1, which is Becrux of Stratification. And its abilities are as follows. Although, when retired from Guardian Circle, you may put this card into your soul. This is similar to what we've seen with the Harry Magia Doll skills, that they can put themselves into the soul after guarding. This is nice to increase the soul count via different ways than just the usual way, so you can actually use your cards as defensive options and then set up for powerful plays later down the line. This in particular synergizes with Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus, that wants a certain amount of grades into the soul, but it can also work with Gleaming Lord Uranus, that just want to soul blast 2 cards to generate a force marker. So it's synergized with those particular skills. And it also has a second ability, which is probably the main attraction of this card, and that's auto on Vanguard Circle. So you want to write this thing. When placed, cast Soul Blast 1 and reveal an Astral Poet or Astral Deity from your hand. Search your deck for up to 1 Arcturus of Fervent Will, reveal it and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. Arcturus of Fervent Will is the grade 2 in this duo, and it basically allows you then to search at your grade 2 right target and then always have that grade 2 ready to go into for next turn. This is very nice for the Astral Poet Astral Deity deck, as that deck tends to run a surplus of high grade units, and this card also synergizes with adding more of those cards, as you have the higher increase of actually revealing one of those cards in your opening hand. So with the fact that you're probably gonna run about 12 to maybe potentially 16 higher grade units, being able to search at your grade 2s is actually very nice, as it means you're less grade stuck in the early game, as when you can open up this card, you basically also open up with a grade 2, as it just searches out the grade 2. And Soul Blasting 1 is not that bad in this particular case, as you're gonna Soul Blast a grade 0, which doesn't put a hamper or damper on your Origin Deity, as it doesn't work with that skill. Now with that said, let's dive into the grade 2, which is also a rare, and that is of course Arcturus of Fervent Will, and it has a continuous skill in the soul. This card gets grade +2. So when it's in the soul, it's a grade 4, so to speak. And this is mainly to synergize with Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus, as him being a grade 4 means that you only need to Soul Blast the grade 1 that you wrote during this game. This can either be the grade 1 that we just talked about, or just any grade 1 for that matter. And you already can fulfill for the grade 5 condition that you need to Soul Blast to open up the Astral Plane. So that's actually a pretty nice interaction, as that means you will have less issues of paying that cost without needing to Soul Blast a surplus of cards, so you can save up your soul for your Trial Deck Uranus, so you can make more force markers in the early game. So that's a nice interaction for that particular skill. But the main attraction once again goes to the second skill, which is actually a really powerful effect, as its second ability is Auto on Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When placed, cast Counterblast 1 and reveal an Astral Poet or Astral Deity from your hand. Get an imaginary gift force, put that marker onto your Vanguard Circle, and if Becrux of Stratification is in your soul, draw a card. So this is once again another way, if we write this, or maybe call it the trigger circle, a way to create a force markers. And this also allows us to do that in the early game, as you can just write it on the Vanguard circle, or maybe even call it the trigger circle in grade 2, and just for a count of less, create a marker. Revealing the Astral Poet or the Astral Deities isn't really that hard to do, as you probably will always have one copy in your opening hand, and then definitely once you go into your grade 2 turns. If you don't, you probably are very unlucky, as you're running like a significant amount of cards that fulfill this condition. Now, just on the surface, being able to pay one counterblast for one marker could maybe already justify it to some extent, maybe not, depending on what your stance is. Like a force marker on your grade 2 turn while your opponent is only grade 1 has a lot of value, as it also will translate into your future turn. So you could make the argument that maybe it's already fulfilling the value of that counterblast. But if we have the grade 1 in the soul, maybe we wrote it the previous turn, and then with the grade 1 we could fetch out this grade 2, then we also get the draw on top of that. Getting the draw on top of that already fulfills the condition of this card and makes it way more worth it than what you're paying. Because in that case, it's a Mutsuki that's cheaper. Because Mutsuki is a counterblast and soul blast on your Vanguard circle. This is then only a counterblast. Reveal card, but that's not really a cost, it's more of a condition. So that's actually really good. But on top of that, you can also call to the trigger circle, meaning you can use this skill throughout the entirety of the match. You can also use multiples on your grade 2 turn. Unlike Mutsuki, that's only usable in one specific scenario, and that's about it. And even that card was already playable for the deck, as it had so much up value if you could resolve the skill. This is a Mutsuki that you can probably resolve any time during the match whenever you can call this thing to the field. And with the grade 1 being able to shove itself into the soul after guarding makes it much easier to fulfill the potential draw effect of this card. As even if you couldn't write the grade 1, let's say for example you write a generic grade 1 on your starter, and then you use the starter skill to draw a card, and that's the grade 1. Well, you can just guard with it during your opponent's turn, get it into the soul, and the next turn write this thing and still be able to get the draw off. So that's already pretty good, and then in a subsequent turns you can still reuse your extra copies of this grade 2 to get even more markers onto the field and more of those draws. So these twos are a very interesting duo that probably will run together. If you are able to run the grade 2, you're definitely going to run the grade 1 because it searches out the grade 2 and it makes the grade 2 even better. So I don't see the reason why you wouldn't play the grade 1. The new Astral Poet deck definitely has more wiggle room to actually put more emphasis on the grade 3s and grade 5s and just put their power plays into there. And the reason why I say that is because this new VR is definitely worthwhile to run in your Astral Poet deck. So with that said, let's dive into this new VR, shall we? So here we have the new VR for Genesis, which is Holy Heavenly Dragon, Eosanesis Dragon. And Eosanesis Dragon has a couple of skills, and this first skill is what we already seen with all the other Astral Poets, as it has the generic Continuous of Vanguard Circle skill. If your Vanguard Circle has 5 or more force markers, your back row center Vanguard Circle becomes an Astral Plane. Only an Astral Deity can be on an Astral Plane. So this is similar to all the other VRs that we've got, except for Origin Deity, because that one is a little bit different. And as we've seen on the other skills here, it has a Vanguard Vanguard Circle skill and a Guardian Circle skill, which means we will probably stick with Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus as our main Vanguard, as that could allow us to open up the Astral Plane faster and potentially resend our Valkyrian, which is probably the most powerful thing that we can do with the deck. So let's take a look at those particular skills and see how this as a backup, or you could say as a supporter grade 3, works with the current deck that we have. His second ability is Auto Vanguard Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost Counterblast 1, search your deck for up to 1 Astral Deity, reveal it, and put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, and if you put a card into your hand, get an imaginary gift force and put that marker onto your Vanguard Circle. So this card is basically the skill that the entire deck needed since the deck was created. Because the problem is with the whole Astral Plane, Astral Deity, Astral Poet deck is that, yes, even if you manage to get enough cards onto the field that can generate markers and you can fulfill the condition to open up the Astral Plane, If you do not have your Valkyrian, then opening up that Astral Plane does absolutely jack shit. So you need a way to get to your Valkyrian as consistent as possible. The only way that we had was Deputized Bear that could search out in the top 7 cards to potentially get it. But that wasn't a guaranteed way. This card now is a guaranteed way to get to your Valkyrian, and as soon as it states Astral Deity, if we ever get other Astral Deities, it can just fetch out any one of those. So we could potentially, if we get more Astral Deities, run a mix of these Astral Deities, as Eosanesis Dragon can just fetch out whatever version that we want at that particular time in the game. So that is already a really good skill for just a Counterblast 1. But on top of that, they also gave us the force marker, which is insane if you think about it, because that is actually a free force marker as just Counterblast 1 to search out our win condition or our play maker is actually, in my honest opinion, already value enough that you can generate out of it. But that extra force marker is just extra, it's just a cherry on top of that. This already can tell you that you might maybe want to run 10 to 12 grade 3s with a 4-4-4 or maybe a 4-3-3 split here, as these cards are really, really good. But there's even one more addition to the skill, because it has a first skill with the Guardian Circle, which actually might make you want to run 12 grade 3s just in general, and maybe an extra couple of Astral Deities, because you can actually get value out of those extra cards, as its final skill is Auto on Guardian Circle. When placed, cause discard an Astral Poet or Astral Deity from your hand, and one of your units cannot be hit until the end of that battle. This, ladies and gentlemen, is another Sentinel card for Genesis. This card basically tells you that Genesis, or the Astral Deity deck, has access to 8 perfect cards, and it has the same condition. You need to discard a card from your hand, so it's not even overcosted. The only difference here is that it needs to discard specifically the grade 3s or your grade 5. And let's be honest, in most cases, those are probably your primary target to discard with a perfect card anyways. And with the fact that you already have an incentive to run a surplus of these Astral Poets and Astral Deities, because Origin Deity wants to rest too, so you need multiple copies of those onto the field. Also, your Astral Poets are probably the most easy way to generate these force markers. We also have the Eosanesis Dragons that can just search out your Astral Deity, which is also an ideal effect. And of course, you need to run your Astral Deities, as those are your win conditions. So the deck already gave you enough incentive to actually run a surplus of these cards. Now, Eosanesis Dragon actually gives you more value on top of those cards, because getting all these surplus, yes, they will give you value throughout the game, but at some point you probably have an excess amount of these cards in your hand. Now with this card, you can actually get value out of that and stall a little bit into the late game, where you can actually overwhelm your opponent with a 70k body that restands and probably comes with a couple of extra crits. So overall, this is an amazing VR that allows you to increase the consistency of the deck. As I explained at the beginning of this video, it isn't really a power crept card that just power creeps other cards out of the deck. The only card that it might power creep to some extent is Astral Dragon. But let's not kid ourselves. Astral Dragon on release was already seen as a bad card, and the original trial deck or Uranus was already out competing that card just by the fact that it doesn't have a rearguard circle skill, and that's why that card would already seen some way of an end of the light at some point once we get more rearguard Vanguard circle skilled VR Astral Poets, like we've seen with the last couple of iterations. So this isn't really that surprising, but the surprising factor is that this card doesn't out power creep the trial deck Uranus as well as Origin Deity Light Uranus. So we can actually run these cards together, and they work very nicely together with already the existing Astral Deity that is Valkyrian. So yeah, this deck is looking pretty sweet. It doesn't change up that much. The playstyle is pretty similar, but now we can do some extra defensive options and increase the consistency in our potential right chain ability with the grade 1 and the grade 2. But you need to be careful, because as you can see, these cards that we showcased today that were revealed yesterday, they don't get any power. The grade 1 doesn't gain power, the grade 2 doesn't gain power, and this grade 3 also doesn't gain power, which means your rearguard columns and your early game Vanguard columns, besides the force markers you generate, will be pretty underwhelming. This means you still are very reliant on the previous grade 1 and grade 2 triple Rs, I believe, from the previous support set, which allows you to beat with high numbers. We have the Phenomenos, the grade 2, that can just pump up a lot of power and can also be a draw engine, but you probably won't be able to use its skill because these newer cards have more value behind their counterblast effect. But Phenomenos is just a very good beater. And at the same time, Decay of Just Path just got a whole lot of better with this grade 3, because now you want to resolve that skill as consistent as possible to search out those multiple Astral Poets, as you're gonna increase the amount of Astral Poets you're gonna run, which increase the consistency of that grade 1, and it allows you to be more aggressive in the early game, and at the same time could potentially help you to fix a PG, as you could fix an Eosanesis Dragon together with another Astral Poet, which then can be combined together to create a perfect Arcturus, so to speak. With that said, we basically talked about all the reveals that were revealed yesterday. There were only 3 cards, but they're really interesting as they do something that we haven't really seen all that often from Bushiroad. They upgrade a deck without actually power creeping the deck, which is a breath of fresh air, if I'm gonna be honest, and I hope we're gonna see that more often with the future support within this set, as there's a lot of potential with the new cards like Gurgit and Gavriel and all the other cards like the new Vanquisher, which I hope they're gonna do in a similar fashion that we've seen with yesterday's reveal of the Eosanesis Dragon for the Astral Plane deck. Now, there's one more thing for the Genesis news side, as they're Bushiroad, I don't know how this happened, but apparently some cards were leaked beforehand, and the VR that we just discussed today was one of those cards. But 2 of those other cards were the original Legion pair of CEO Yggdrasil and Norn, which both are Regalia units. Those skills got revealed a couple of days ago, and today, as of recording of this video, we saw the reveal of the card artwork with those skills in some kind of magazine. So they are now officially confirmed that those cards are actually gonna return. I'm not addressing them in this video because there's no official translation and I'm not that fluent in Moon Ruins, so I have no clue what the skills actually does. But there are some really interesting hints and details on their skill tags that might signal something interesting that can happen in Premium with the already existing Regalia support. But if you want to know more of that and have a glimpse of those cards, then I would advise you to follow me on Twitter, as I shared that photo on my own Twitter account if you want to see it for yourself. So if you want to see more of those information for CEO Yggdrasil and the other and Norn, those Regalia units, then follow me at twitter.com/MrTimeleap to get the latest scoop on that one. But with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new support cards for the Astral Plane deck. They're really interesting, and I want to know what you guys' opinion are. Are you excited about the fact that we get some more consistency takes and also a new way to increase our defensive capabilities, as that's not really the primary focus of Bushiroad for Vanguard? It's a breath of fresh air, and I want to know what you guys' opinion on that is, because I honestly cannot wait to see if we're gonna get this more, as this is something that I definitely want to see more often from Bushiroad. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap, and I see you guys in the next one!